Hi, folks. Welcome to Friday's edition of the iWrite Radio podcast videocast. This is Hat Friday. As I think I say every week, it's just to remind us that the days of the week are different.
Ahoy there.
Yeah, Jimmy's union has now become a maritime union.
I like
matching top as well. Hello, sailor.
And he has to wear the uniform because, that's the way it goes. We're going to have a chat about the Sun's front page, the R number, what it tells us, what it doesn't about the different parts of the country. And we're going to touch on the, although it's not an official ad campaign, the Tory politicising the pandemic now. All that nice, let's all be nice to each other bullshit, it's gone to one side, apart from apparently Boris Johnson, who I think still thinks everybody should agree with him. So we'll start with the Sun. Stuart, the front page of the Sun.
Yes, so it turns out we discovered a few days ago that if we didn't already know that the world's best known female writer, J.K. Rowling, was domestically abused, not by her current husband, but her first husband. And for some reason or other, unknown to almost anybody, but the people who've done it, Rupert Murdoch, who owns the paper, Rebecca Brooks, who we know is a corrupt journalist already, because she's already been in the courts about that, and that was 10 years ago, wasn't it? And the editor have decided to splash a great big picture of J.K. Rowling on the front page of the Sun, along with a picture of her first husband, who's saying he gave her a slap and he's no regrets. How absolutely appalling.
If you give me just a second, guys, I'll actually show you it.
I think the word's misogyny.
Oh, it's definitely been fairly extreme. I don't know if you can see it there, guys, can you?
Mm.
Oh, aye.
I slapped JK and I'm not sorry. It's the Sun confronts her first husband.
Yeah, the Sun's trying to justify it in some way by confronting her abuser.
She doesn't look like it was the happiest day of her life there, does she?
Yeah. I think what's been more annoying is quite how many people who piled onto J.K. Rowling when she made her statement about women, and then were remarkably dismissive when she actually issued an essay, I think, yesterday to clarify her positions. They've been utter hypocrites this morning by condemning the Sun. The likes of Owen Jones, who, as far as I'm concerned, is just an archetypal gay man that hates women, apart from trans women. But he absolutely steamed into her this week, and then he's been apoplectic about how bad the Sun are this morning. And the hypocrisy rips off his tongue. I mean, it doesn't stop to think for a second how two-faced he's being. But then the whole GRA argument is nasty. It's wicked. I tweeted something about this last night. I just think it's astonishing that women attack women and then are surprised when misogyny raises its ugly head again. The fact that women want to attack each other is crazy, in my opinion, and they're just opening the space for old school misogyny to jump back in and put its knee on their neck.
There's a thought.
Well, I find the whole thing incredibly difficult, to be honest. I mean, I don't see how you square the circle, how you maintain women's rights to privacy and look after the trans community, because it clashes.
It does clash, mate. It clashes hugely.
And I can't see an answer.
I think there's going to have to be a bit of building work or a bit of renovation. The safe spaces argument, you'll never get happiness on that point. So you're going to have to build a third space. There's going to have to be third toilets, third changing rooms, and things like that. But the other arguments where women are saying, hold it, how can a trans woman compete against women in sport? I didn't see how there's any possibility of that happening and it being a level playing field. It just can't happen.
Logic seems to have disappeared somewhere.
Can I ask a simple question on this issue? Is it a generational thing? Is it just old people against this change and young people that seem to support the extremists?
To a certain extent it is, but there are, I think one of the major problems has been that there's been a trans community for decades that have had no voice whatsoever. And the unfortunate thing is they're now being funded for some very strange places, mate. And they have a remarkably loud voice given the size of the trans community.
The voices I'm hearing now are not the voices of the guys, of the women who I know who went through the 2 years transitioning.
No, it's not.
You can have nothing but respect and admiration for the courage that these women showed. And everyone I met, and I'm talking about the practical space of a pub.
Mm-hmm.
And you guys know the pub I'm talking about. Now, these women had to basically live as women. So they wanted to use the ladies' toilets.
Mm.
Now, it wasn't a huge problem in that pub because there was only one cubicle. So effectively, you could stand at the door and just say, could you wait a couple of minutes before you go in, and it could be policed. So if women were getting upset about it, you could just say, look, let's be reasonable tonight kind of thing. But the idea that my generation have a problem with it, we don't.
No, I've had trans friends for over 30 years.
Yeah, it seems to be an argument being played out mostly among activists and young people, and others are getting dragged into it. But as I say, I've had a wee look into some stuff, and some of the money comes from Big Pharma. Big Pharma are only backing them if they're going to get money back, and of course they do when you get people starting to take puberty blockers and things like that. It's a nasty, nasty business that actually needs the argument itself to calm down a bit, just so that we can all take a closer look at what's going on.
What's this thing about? What effectively, and I apologize, but women with beards and axes. What is that about? How did these people expect to get people on board acting like that?
But that's what they want. They want the right to declare themselves as a woman while still having a beard, while still having the crown jewels downstairs. But they want to be recognised as a woman, regardless of what genitalia they have and what facial hair they've got. And that upsets a lot of women who are scared, who have been abused by men or have had problems with men in the past, and don't feel that men should be, what they see as men, should be in ladies' lavvies or ladies' changing rooms.
The other thing that's kind of stunned me is women of my generation don't seem to have a problem with it. Now, that really surprised me. But the women I know of my generation, we end up arguing about it. And I wonder if we know enough bad guys through our lives that we know would use this as camouflage.
Aye, I do. I know a couple that would use it, mate. And there are documented cases. There was a specific case over in Kirkcaldy that I don't want to get into, but it's a textbook case for why you don't allow people like that into ladies' loos. I read a quote this morning and it struck me. I'll just mention it to you guys. It's a guy who transitioned 30 years ago. And he was basically just telling trans activists, I respect your points, but I don't agree with you. I was born a woman and I'm now a man. But biologically, I am still a woman. If I wasn't a woman, I wouldn't be transsexual. And it just struck me that was a very simple argument that's hard to argue against.
I'm kind of in a space where I'm not sure that I understand it well enough.
Yeah, I certainly feel that way as well, mate.
You know,
But I've been doing a lot of reading because it's definitely, my worry is that this whole argument blows up and blows apart the SNP because, as you know, I'm only interested in Scottish independence. And if they are going to cost or even look like costing Scotland independence, I would be bloody raging.
Stuart, you tend to avoid this subject like the plague. Or
It's been,
like coronavirus, sorry.
well, if you like, I mean, without mentioning any names, a friend of mine of 20 years standing told me 20 years ago that he had to give up, gay friend, I know plenty of them, so I'm not identifying them. He had to give up bulletin boards. This is the early days of social media when there were bulletin boards. He had to give up being on some bulletin boards because the trans people on the bulletin boards were so aggressive. And this was 20 years ago.
Yeah.
That's the difference I see in this and other sexual minority groups. This just seems so nasty.
Aye. I mean, Norrie, how can anybody who's advocating trans rights think it's acceptable to threaten rape to women who disagree with trans rights? How can it possibly be acceptable to use rape as a threat? You're undermining every argument you've got when you're talking like that.
And the other thing that strikes me about it is this idea that they know that inside they're a woman. How do they know what a woman is inside? Are women not individuals? Isn't every woman not different?
Well,
I find the whole thing really complicated and difficult to understand.
I think a lot of people do, Norrie, and I think that's why a lot of folk have stayed away from the argument, but it doesn't seem like it's going to be one that we can. I mean, Joanne Lamont put out a wee statement yesterday, and you guys both know I'm no fan of Joanne, but basically she was saying that even when they were arguing for women's rights back in the day, she met a lot of people that disagreed with her, but she didn't meet many people that told her what it was to be a woman and told her that she was somehow not a good enough woman. But she meets people like that all the time now.
I mean, to me, that's the baseline. It's why we shouldn't have an argument against people living the life that they want to live, is that we're all individuals. And, you know,
find
plenty of feminine men who live as men, but, you know, dress otherwise. I mean, we all have a friend whose style of dress would raise eyebrows in certain places, but I mean, he's quite well known in our area and he's well liked and well respected.
Aye. As I say, mate, the argument is so toxic that it tends to disallow people to actually look closely at all the details and find ways, as you say, find ways through it so that everybody can live their best life. Because that's what we want for everybody, surely, is that you live the life you want and you live the best life you can. But with the toxicity surrounding this, nobody's getting a chance to discuss it. It's just people getting shouted down and abused all the time. And frankly, maybe that's deliberate. Maybe they want the argument to be the main thing.
The only suggestion I had was that all male toilets become unisex. Male toilets, not female toilets.
Yeah.
There are some things I've already decided I'm not really entitled to have an opinion upon. Well, I can have an opinion, but I shouldn't express them in public because I am very old. I look at all kinds of things that young people do, and I just wonder. Well, you know, sometimes I'm old.
Consider yourself thoroughly abused for your ageism, Stuart.
Yeah, well,
easy, Methuselah. You've outperformed those young people in many fields they'll never get close to.
Look, I've got no passaran. I'm wearing my bandana with a picture of, oh God, whose face is on my back? The most famous
Che Guevara.
Che Guevara on the back.
Che
Yes.
Guevara.
You can't forget Che Guevara. You'll end up having to run a pub in Leith, mate, if you forget who he is.
Let's move on from what I think we all accept is a very knotty problem that we have no answers to the R figure.
The R figure.
Stuart wanted to bring this up. The R figure.
There's a new star appeared. She's been building, her profile has been building for a while now. She's a professor in the subject. I forget which subject it is. Is it called epidemiology or something? Anyway, she's an expert in the coronavirus pandemic. Her name's Debbie Schrader, and she's never up the telly. She's the go-to person now. And she said she actually doesn't normally just speak about Scotland, but she said that Scotland could be looking at a bumpy ride in the near future because we're looking at the R figure in Scotland apparently is now dropped a bit between 0.6 and 0.8, which it was between 0.7 and 0.9, I believe, last week. Unfortunately, I don't exactly have the precise figure, but just across the border in the northwest of England, the R figure has gone up, and it's over 1, which is the benchmark. If you don't know anything too much about it, and there is worry about the number of people coming across from northwest England that could be carrying the virus, and spreading, reintroducing the virus into Scotland. Also, partly because also the social distancing rules have been eased more in England than they have in Scotland, and people think they can get in their cars to drive into Scotland and go to a beauty spa, which we can't do in Scotland.
Can I pull you on that? Has that actually been announced that they're shortening the 2 meters to 1 meter?
No.
No, it hasn't. It's just been argued about.
I wasn't talking about just the 2 meters. I was meant social distancing broadly, which means more than just the 2 meters. It's a broader term than just that. It's staying out of all kinds of places. And as I say, I just used the example here. You and I, all three of us, we kind of get in our car and drive to a beauty spot in Scotland, more than 5 miles away, and enjoy the beach and the mountains and on the air and all the rest of it. But there's thousands of people crossing the border from the northwest of England that believe they can do that in England, and a lot of them believe they can drive into Scotland and do it. Now, that's upsetting a lot of people. It doesn't actually bother me personally, but I know it's upsetting an awful lot of people on social media. And the professor mentioned it, and you're wondering,
So do you think there's a high chance that the northwest of England will invade the southwest of Scotland, and all our Tory MPs down in that part of the world, MPs and MSPs, will succumb to corona?
I think we couldn't be that lucky.
Well, I think we're talking about behavioural science here. In other words, I'm referring to the social media reaction from Scottish social media users. They're getting a bit het up. Some of them, I feel, they should be a little...
Well, she did make the point at the presser today that she didn't have the power to close borders.
She did make that point. Very true.
So, yeah.
Although she did refer to New Zealand, and she almost said she wished she had the powers.
Yes.
The difference with New Zealand, mate, is that they've got a watery border all the way around and we haven't.
Well, there's a big difference, yes.
But true. Certainly the Debbie Schrader thing was interesting. You're right, her star's in the ascent at the moment. She was doing a worldwide podcast, videocast with Chelsea Clinton yesterday for the Clinton Foundation. So when you're working with Bill and Hillary's daughter, you're definitely on the up. But it is a worry because the southwest of Scotland has had a very good pandemic, shall we say, and has a pretty low R rating at the moment, regional-wise, although they're not quite announcing the regional stuff, but that's one of the lowest other than the Western Isles. And it is a worry because northwest England is dire at the moment. And
it seems to be very difficult. The smaller the area is that you want to give an R number for, Seems to be.
Yeah.
It seems to get more and more difficult the less.
But I think it's
people.
worth saying, talking about the behavioural science aspect, that for weeks now, the tourist sector in the Lake District, we've all driven down the M6 many times, I'm sure, and as soon as you get past the Lake District, south of the Lake District, you realise that there are millions of people piling from the north of England into the Lake District every weekend, all summer long. It's their local playground. If they're being told by all the tourist businesses in the Lake District to stay away, it's possible they're carrying on up the M6 into Scotland thinking, oh, it's a much bigger place, and we don't hear them complaining.
Nah, it's kind of, after the first couple of weekends, it's calmed it down considerably. Our problem's more with people from Glasgow that want to go to the Highlands.
Fair enough.
Central Belt folk, but the Lake Districts, if people can go, they can go to the Lake Districts now. They can wander about. The problem is that a lot of the facilities aren't open, and a lot of the bars and restaurants still aren't open yet. So,
well, that'll be the real indicator. I mean, you're talking about how people behave, Stuart. If people simply don't open up, that's them voting by not opening their businesses.
Well, but of course, this is the big issue at the moment. Of course, it's the 2 metre advised gap that you've got to stay away, and that really doesn't work very well with pubs or restaurants.
Yeah, well,
at all.
Which is why they want to bring it down to 1 metre.
I would suggest that the amount of Tory MPs that you've had whinging on about that for the last 2 or 3 days means that Boris will announce that on Sunday, because he does love an announcement at the weekend, doesn't he?
Which brings us very neatly on to Jimmy's subject for today, which is the latest Tory advertising campaign.
Yeah, I was a bit annoyed yesterday when I seen how they were approaching their release of figures about furlough. Basically, they broke it down into regions and told you how many people they'd furloughed, how many jobs they'd saved, how many bank accounts were receiving furlough money. Scotland was a figure of 628,000, but the way they presented it, they were effectively trying to infer that England had sent enough money up to Scotland to save 628,000 jobs.
Well, this is the broad shoulders argument.
Yeah, the whole broad shoulders malarkey. There was no equivocation, no clarification that the money spent on furlough in Scotland comes from bloody taxes raised in Scotland.
Exactly.
Or it comes from borrowings that the UK government have made, and any borrowings that they make will be charged to the Scottish government at some point.
On top of that, don't forget, not only do we pay a huge amount of income tax, as we would by our head of population, the Scottish economy is outside the southeast of England is the most active economy in the UK. So it's paying taxes hand over fist.
Well, the stats I saw indicated that percentage-wise, that money, there was more of it went as a percentage of the whole to England than to Scotland. So the money they've borrowed to cover it, we'll be paying our usual 8.9% or whatever it is.
Aye, we'll pay a lot more than we get. We benefit from
even
it.
Though we didn't get a full 8.9% in furlough money. We will still be expected to pay a population-sized chunk of the interest.
The other thing that kind of annoyed me was the amount of coordination, you'd have to say, that all our lovely Scottish Tory MPs and MSPs, they were all tweeting all that nonsense within 5 minutes of each other.
Well,
it was
the tweet I saw was
campaign.
quite good. Somebody retorted that 40%, does that sound right? 40% of jobs in Scotland are on furlough. And they made the big hoo-ha about it. And the guy went, yeah, but 100% of people working in Scotland pay tax to the Treasury.
Aye.
You know, so what's this about, kind of thing?
Oh, so it gives me another opportunity to say, well, who'd have known it, eh? Unionists sowing division and separation, causing votes to come from no to yes. Who'd have guessed it?
I must sort out a clip of Boris Johnson saying to stammers at PMQs, no politicking, please. We're in the middle of a pandemic. And every time I see one of these Tory shits in Scotland coming out with this, I'm just going to send it to him.
I'm surprised we didn't go into this part of this topic on our daily discussion via the Boris bonking bubble. I thought you'd have swerved through there to get to the... After all, we were talking about... What were we talking about before the Boris bonking bubble? It doesn't matter anyway. Yes, no. Apparently he's changed the rules. I heard apparently last week the rules changed so you could go and visit people and you could have a bubble with your family as long as it was one person went to one family. It was very complicated, but effectively it boiled down to the fact that you could have a prostitute turn up in your house because she was working and therefore entitled to be there, but you couldn't have your lover turned up in your house because the rules didn't allow that. So is that why they changed the rules?
Sure, I'm really surprised you paid that much attention, being the AGR and all.
I think the reason he's changed the rules is he must have found a new bit of strange, mate.
He's getting bored with the IDN.
Well, he's got an awful long and illustrious track record as a dodgy swordsman, so there must be a new bit of strange on them.
We, of course, have no proof of this whatsoever.
I didn't care, mate. I'm happy to cast an aspersion against Boris Johnson. He's an absolute arsehole and deserves to have aspersions cast against him at all times.
Did you see the piece, I think it was actually in the Times, that suggested he was taking 3-hour naps in the afternoon?
Well, of course.
I wouldn't be surprised if Jacob Rees-Mogg's nanny is burping him and putting him in a nappy before he gets put down for his nap, mate. That's how much of a clown he is.
Could be, but it brings up one of the things that interesting things that the First Minister said at our briefing just a few minutes ago, which included a very little talked about fact, which is a fact now. Not only are an awful lot of people dying of this virus, a lot of people that are recovering from this virus are left with what could be permanent health conditions. And,
Boris and the British government are acting like this is almost over, and it's nowhere near almost over. And they're acting like that for one reason, because big business is harassing them, and that's where they get their funding. It's the only reason that they want to open the country up quite so quickly, because they're getting bothered by their pals who aren't making enough profit with their pub chains.
Oh, wait a minute. Here's one that you won't have spotted. I spotted that apparently last week or last month, Boris's Russian tennis partner bunged another £450,000 into the Tory party in the last 2 or 3 months.
Well, that's all right, because she's a British citizen now.
It's just the same old. It's the same old money getting regurgitated again and again.
I don't think there's any doubt, guys, that this is no longer about health for the Tory party at Westminster. This is now about business.
It's about business in the economy, absolutely.
That switch has been made, and I fully expect the 2 meters to be cut to 1.
Yeah, I'm surprised.
That's a certainty, or there wouldn't be so many of them talking about it.
There's some wee actuary sitting in a back room, leashed to Dominic Cummings, working it all out. 17 deaths, £12 million.
Mm-hmm. But the beauty of it all will be when they do switch it to 1 and say that this is absolutely acceptable because it's a WHO recommendation. Will that be the first WHO recommendation they've actually bloody followed?
Is a WHO recommendation not 1.5?
No, it's 1, mate.
Well, no, it's not. I'm going to pick on you there, Jimmy. It's 1+. It's to be more than 1, but it doesn't say 1.5.
I'm sorry. No, but I'm sorry. It is 1+. You're right, Stuart. But there's not a single person in the British media that has reported it as anything other than 1.
Why has nobody asked that question that we were just talking about? Why has nobody said to Boris Johnson, at what point, Matt Hancock, because Boris is hiding in a fridge somewhere, to Matt Hancock, why can't you just announce that your priority is now the economy?
Yeah, but anyway, can you imagine? Imagine going. You're right. They bring it down to 1 meter. So if they do that, they're going to have to make everybody wear masks in restaurants. How on earth do you eat a meal with wearing a mask?
That's why they invented straws, mate. You'll all be given your own blender.
I'm not going to Martin
Put your
Wishart and
steak
paying
and
him
chips in
£100
your
for a free
blender.
£100
And
to
then
Martin
straw.
Wishart for 3 courses, and you have to soak it through a straw away and pat peas at your arse.
Peas are about the only thing you could get through a thick.
Oh, Jimmy's in form. Jimmy's in
You're
form again. Oh, here, there's a man just walking past with 12 cans of Tennant's Lager in his hands. So there
Must
you go.
be Friday.
Lucky man.
He's not a wee rotund guy with a grey beard, is he?
No, he's a young. Well, no, he's baldy actually, but he's slim.
Anything else then, guys, that you would...
I want to have a pop at the BBC again, surprisingly.
Our brothers in arms.
Yeah, mate. I don't know if you've seen the story yesterday. You probably did about... Well, the BBC presented it as a massive failure of the Scottish government. They've failed to meet another target, mate.
I did.
They only planted about 11,500 hectares of... No, sorry, it was 10,800 hectares of tree planted last year, the Scottish government. So they only got to 90% of their target. And the BBC presented that as a failure. But just to put that in some kind of perspective, Scotland planted 80% of all the trees planted in the UK last year. England managed 1.67%. And the BBC and Kevin Keane still managed to turn that into an SNP bad story.
I saw it. Was the year April to April?
I believe it is.
Did you see the dates? Because I've got a sneaky feeling we're going to find that it's been impacted by the pandemic.
Oh, aye, they'd have met their target, mate. As I say, they were at 90% and then think everything got shut down.
I'll tell you, you're going to get a lot of that. Oh, your education figures are shocking. Well, we had a pandemic. But that's not the point.
Right. If all of the SNP figures will be disgusting and disgraceful, and they'll not be able to bring up the pandemic. And any figures from England, Wales, or Northern Ireland, they're fine. They had the pandemic, so they didn't have to meet their targets. It's
certainly when Jean Freeman was in front of the Scottish Affairs Committee yesterday. I can't remember his name. He's now a junior minister.
Andrew Bowie.
Bowie had already sent out a press release with the questions he was going to answer. Ask her.
Oh, she didn't give him any leeway at all. She did very well from what I saw.
I thought she did well. Yeah.
I thought it was quite a good performance, and I'll tell you, you're right about Jason Leach being a performer, mate. He absolutely had a wee bravura performance as well yesterday. I kind of I was surprised by Alberto Costa. He was actually, probably knew he was on a sugary peg if he was going to attack they two. So he was just actually relatively nice to them.
He's sat on that committee before, and he's actually been reasonable. He's asked sensible questions. The same with the blonde lassie, the other Tory. I watched her the first time she was on the committee, and she was actually really good. I mean, it was subjects of relevance to Scotland, and it wasn't about slagging anybody. It was genuinely informative.
The blonde one, she tried to she's trying to get a nasty wee point in, but she made no progress, to be honest, did she?
Well, we're on about that committee, chaps. I just got a wee Twitter block for the chairman of that committee this morning for suggesting that he doesn't own the independence movement, and he certainly shouldn't describe anyone within it as the yes fringe.
Pete Wishart.
I wasn't very polite, right enough, but there was no sweary stuff. I was kind of surprised he blocked me, but he's always struck me as a bit of a pussy anyway. So
Pete does not like people who disagree with him.
Can't he wait till I meet up with him at the next Yes March or something?
I don't think Pete goes on marches.
Nah, probably because he's feared of getting roasted by people who actually know what they're talking about and don't get paid $100,000 to sit on their ass in London.
I have to say, I thought he did quite well yesterday, pointing out the fact that the press release had been sent out. Had I been him, I would have been very tempted not to let Mr. Bauer ask any questions and then explain what the press release was about an hour after the committee was over.
It always reminds me,
parliamentary.
I don't know if you've been watching Succession, as I suggested a few weeks ago. The
Oh yeah.
American, the American box set with oh goodness me,
Brian Cox.
Ryan Cox starring as effectively Rupert Murdoch. It's all about a dysfunctional family owning a media family, and the son there who keeps messing things up, snorting too much coke. And that Andrew Bowie looks like somebody that's on too much coke all the time.
He's a bit too gallus for his experience.
Well, that's what I'm suggesting. Cocaine. Of course, you might say it's methamphetamine, but I don't know if that's very popular in Aberdeen.
He's a bit Darren Grimes, isn't he?
He's just a little too cocky.
Have you seen John Lamont, the Borders fella? He does Iron Man or something. He really is
Well, he had a really good go at them as well.
Yeah,
yesterday.
But he's having a go at them over stuff that he kind of only half knew the facts of, because he's had his.
No, I'm pretty sure the story there, Jimmy, is the Tory in charge of the Borders Health Board and him are pals. And they've been looking. This is the third thing that's come out of the Borders this week about not being enough tests and blah, 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 blah. But what everybody fails to mention is there was a meeting a week ago today with all the health heads.
And Borders,
And Borders had nothing to say at the meeting.
There is no concerns, and then they've got all these concerns this week, which clearly the bird that's in charge of Borders Health Board is an absolute Tory beast.
Well, it's looking very, very political at the moment. So that'll be interesting to see. The other aspect of this is I really do think they're getting the retaliation in first, because I think the private homes are going to come back to haunt them. I'm looking forward to the guy who's trolling all the directorships of private home care at the moment to see how many Tories are involved.
I think
that'll be some interesting information.
Did they not link the situation in the Irish care homes, nursing homes as they're called over there?
They did, yeah.
Which it's the same situation they've got there as they got in the UK.
Well, effectively, what care homes are, it's like herding the most susceptible people into an arena and then just lobbing grenades in. It was always going to be a dangerous place to be if the virus got in.
Well, as you've said before, and we all know now, they always have problems with all kinds of infections in care homes.
Well, that I have to admit that my initial position on this was that because of their experience, I mean, the only place I've ever known to be locked down because of an infection was the care home my mother was in. And that was flu and that winter vomiting bug. And so they knew how to do it.
Is that norovirus?
Yeah. It just appears that they didn't know how to do it strictly enough.
Just clearly, mate, that this, as much as people are out there telling you it's just like the flu, it's not. It's far more infectious. It mutates quicker, and frankly, it finds pathways that they just weren't expecting it to find. I mean, let's be honest. Half of these care homes thought clearly they've bought the cheapest possible PPE that they needed to buy because they're run on a for-profit basis, and they thought that would be good enough, and it clearly wasn't.
Well, I think what they seem to have done, I don't know, the inquiry will tell us, but because they had systems in place for flu and the vomiting bug, that's what they introduced. Mm-hmm. I think we're going to find that what they did was not enough. No, because their experience told them what had been sufficient in the past.
Aye, certainly that one on Sky lied. They outright lied to NHS Highland. And they done it for a period of about a week, to the point where NHS Highland had to go in there and found it to be a disaster in that particular care home. And that chain has, God only knows, I think they've got about 40 in Scotland alone. God only knows how they've got throughout the UK. So if that was the standard of care that they were offering, I was surprised that things have gone tits up in the care homes. We're all annoyed, we're all upset, and frankly, with hindsight, there should have been far more care taken than was, but we can't go back and change that.
I think
And
for the
I would argue
future,
that the numbers coming down in Scottish care homes, I was going to do an orry there, and Scottish care homes, the way that they are, is saying that, okay, we had a bad start, but we've come on to a game here, we're driving it down, stick with it.
I think for the future, it's going to be interesting, because there's obviously going to be a real battle if the Scottish government decide that they need to nationalise. And when you look at the figures, the not-for-profits and charities seem to have done an awful lot better. So are we actually going to see that side of it expand at the expense of council and private care homes?
I would hope so, mate. Surely we go for the people that have got best practice and expand that best practice as much as we can.
Well, it's going to be an interesting discussion, because it will be public, I would imagine.
Well, this is going to drag on for years. This will certainly be on the agenda for Holyrood. And the Tories are going to fight Holyrood on care homes and independence, which makes a change from just independence.
I wonder who they'll pick to be their next general, because it ain't going to be Jackson Carlow for very much longer, is it?
Again, I mean, a dearth of talent.
Yeah, they seem to be thinking that Adam Tompkins is the man for the future, but I didn't see with his past how he can be a man for the future.
He's about it, really. All their sort of pugnacious talent has gone to Westminster, and that's going to cost them dear. And, well, I suppose they could. I mean, that's a sort of SNP rule, isn't it? That their leader has to sit at Holyrood, not...
Why is it? Yeah, well, they still need some kind of a leader, especially if they're the official opposition in Holyrood. So why do you think it's taken Tompkins so long to become the heir apparent?
I think he's got an awful lot of skeletons in his cupboard, and they're having to do an awful lot of whitewashing, mate.
That's what I was suspecting. But wasn't he a communist once?
Aye, he was in the Communist Party, aye. And he's written some stuff that is very, very un-Tory. If you go back to Stirling University days, mate, some of the stuff that he's written, there'll be shredders working overtime trying to get every copy.
I can't see it. I can't see it. But he's about the only one that... Can you think of anybody else the Tories have?
Maybe wee Jamie Green, but he's a bit young.
Funnily enough, he was the only other one that popped up into my mind.
But there's 2 or 3 of them down at Westminster who don't have a high profile purely and simply because they're at Westminster, who could probably do the job.
Maybe they could give us a dream and give us Murdo for a couple of years just to play with.
Bugsy's turn.
Has Murdo got a safe enough seat?
He's not got a seat, mate.
Well, you know what I mean.
Yes.
Well, let's be honest. Ruth didn't have a seat when she was leader. She got a seat because she became leader. But prior to that, she was a list MSP and all, wasn't she?
Murdo's top of the list has been forever. He's safe as houses, isn't he?
That's because
maybe he'll get knocked over by a Highland coup.
And John Lamont, the MP for Berwickshire and Roxburghshire on the border, according to a map I just saw as a result of some of the polling this last week, because they could end up being the only Tory seat in Scotland.
Oh, Stuart, that just reminded me. Talking of polling, I had another wee look at the American polls, guys. Did you see the CNN poll yesterday morning?
Yes,
Trump. They had Trump 14 points behind, and Trump's campaign team issued a letter, and they put it out on the internet as well, which was hilarious. But they issued a letter asking CNN to retract that poll because they were accusing CNN of having faked the poll and then trying to manipulate the election by having him so far behind. So it was laughable.
I noticed that Biden has said that the army will remove him from the White House if he loses the election.
Well, there you go.
They'll need a big crop army. But I was having a look at the polls, and some of them are quite astonishing. Biden's like 12, 13 points ahead in a lot of polls. But in some of the states, I mean, Georgia, Joe Biden is only 3 points behind in Georgia. And you can't get much more redneck than Georgia.
Aye, but wait until they start taking the votes of black people. Because
it's going to be an interesting summer, mate, because Donald, if he keeps polling that far back, can you imagine what he's going to do when he's actually desperate?
It is quite scary. He'll start a war if that's what he has to do. Bomb Iraq.
I noticed that his Germany's Joint Chiefs yesterday came out and said that he should not have been anywhere near that photo op last week. So when the chairman of the Joint Chiefs is backtracking me,
oh, is this the guy? He walked with Trump through the park to that.
He
tear gassed the demonstrators.
He said that the optics of that were awful. So
yes, he shouldn't have been there in uniform. He felt very bad about being sort of captured.
Okay, guys, that's
right. We better Foxtrot Oscar relay.
Aye, I think our listeners have suffered enough. Thanks, Stuart Lockhead and Jimmy Hunt. I'm Norrie Stewart. We'll have a day off tomorrow, lads, to let Jimmy get over his hangover.
And
we'll see you on Sunday after all the politics programs are over and done with. We'll catch you on Sunday, folks. Cheers for now.